When Sarah's 6-year-old son begins drawing haunting sketches of a burning house and a woman screaming from a window, images he couldn't possibly have seen, she brushes it off as imagination. Until one of the drawings matches a 20-year-old crime scene photo from a house fire across town. Sarah begins to suspect the impossible, that her son remembers a life he never lived. But the truth buried beneath her suburban quiet is far darker than anything she could have imagined. The morning it began was ordinary in the way nightmares often are, the kind of quiet that feels staged. Sarah Bennett stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a juice glass, the cool water numbing her fingertips. Sunlight filtered through the blinds in clean stripes, and the hum of the dishwasher was the only sound, aside from the soft scratch of crayons on paper from the table behind her. "Mommy," her son, Daniel, said. Sarah turned, wiping her hands on a towel. "Yeah, baby." The boy didn't look up. His hand moved slowly, carefully, across the page. He was unusually focused, his small face pinched in concentration. Sarah leaned in to see. It was a house, crudely drawn but unmistakably in flames. Thick black smoke spiraled from the roof, and in one of the upstairs windows, a figure, red crayon for the dress, jagged black lines for hair, stood with her arms outstretched. Screaming. Sarah felt a chill creep up her spine. "Who's that, sweetheart?" Daniel's voice was casual, distracted. "The lady in the window." "Is she okay?" "No," he said, still coloring. "She dies." Sarah froze. "What?" Daniel finally looked up. His blue eyes were calm, almost curious. "She was trying to find the baby, but it was too hot. So she screamed, and then she died. Just like before." The juice glass slipped from Sarah's hand and shattered in the sink. She didn't ask what he meant. Not then. But later, after Daniel had gone to bed and she was cleaning the living room, she found more drawings tucked under the couch cushions. More burning houses. More women in red dresses. And one that made her sit down hard on the edge of the sofa, her heart pounding in her chest. It was a perfect sketch of a street corner in Westfield, the next town over. A street she hadn't driven through in years. But the real horror was in the details: a mailbox, a cracked sidewalk, a bent street sign with the number 102 scrawled on it. There had been a house fire on that exact street. 2 decades ago. Sarah remembered it vaguely. A woman died in the upstairs bedroom, trying to save her newborn from a blaze caused by faulty wiring. The baby had already died in the crib. It was a tragic accident, but nothing out of the ordinary. Until now. Sarah's hands trembled as she picked up the sketch. Her son had never been to that part of town. Never seen that house. The next morning, she took Daniel's drawings to a friend from college who worked as a forensic psychologist in New Haven. He leafed through the pages with a troubled expression, then asked quietly, "Has Daniel ever spoken about past lives?" Sarah laughed. It was sharp, defensive. "You think my son is possessed or something?" "No," he said. "But this might not be imagination. It could be cryptomnesia. Or something deeper. Maybe trauma. The question is, whose?" Outside, the wind rose suddenly, hurling dry leaves against the windows. And Daniel, upstairs in his room, began to hum a lullaby Sarah didn't recognize. One that made her stomach knot with dread. A lullaby sung in the voice of a woman who'd been dead for 20 years. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay stiff in bed beside her husband, Tom, who snored softly with his back turned, blissfully unaware. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that red-dressed woman in the window, her mouth wide in a scream, her arms reaching, pleading through fire. Down the hall, Daniel's door was cracked open. A sliver of light from his night lamp painted a long line across the hardwood floor. Sarah got up and padded silently toward it. He was asleep, curled beneath his dinosaur comforter. But his face, his sweet, usually soft face, was twisted in some kind of strain. His brow furrowed, his fingers clutching the fabric near his neck. And then he murmured something in his sleep. "Evelyn." The name floated out on a breath, fragile and foreign. Sarah's heart stuttered. That wasn't a name they used in their home. No friends, no family, no books. Nothing. The next day, she sat at her kitchen table scrolling through old news archives. It didn't take long. Westfield wasn't big, and local papers had gone digital only a few years earlier. The article was there, buried behind a paywall, but she paid the $2.99 monthly trial without hesitation. House fire claims mother and infant. June 14, 2005. The photo was grainy, but unmistakable. The house from Daniel's drawing. A Victorian-style home, white paint peeling at the corners, now blackened by soot. The fire had started around 3 a.m. Neighbors heard screaming, called 911. By the time firefighters arrived, it was too late. Sarah's hand moved the mouse shakily, scrolling down. The woman's name was Evelyn Monroe, 34 years old. Married. Husband was out of town for work. Their newborn, Lily, had just turned 3 weeks old. There was something else. Sarah clicked to enlarge the sidebar. A quote from a neighbor: she was holding the baby when they pulled her out. Wouldn't let go, even though the child had already passed. I think. She thought she could bring her back. Sarah shut the laptop. Her skin crawled with the sense of something ancient moving just below the surface of her life, like rot under floorboards. That night, she brought it up to Tom. "You're spiraling again," he said, not unkindly, but with that edge of weariness she'd come to expect. "I'm not," she said. "There's something wrong." Daniel remembers things he couldn't possibly. Kids pick up weird stuff. TV. The internet. Maybe you told him something when he was a baby and forgot. "I never said her name." He sighed, pinched the bridge of his nose. "I think you need to talk to someone. Maybe go back on your meds." That cut deeper than she let him see. Because years ago, Sarah had been hospitalized for postpartum psychosis. Briefly, after Daniel was born, she'd seen things, heard things that weren't there. They said it was stress, hormones, sleep deprivation. But she knew what she'd seen. She hadn't told Tom that some of the things she'd hallucinated back then were also about a burning house, a crying woman, a baby wailing from somewhere she couldn't reach. Was it possible Daniel had inherited her madness? Or was it something worse? Something passed down, not through blood, but through fire. That night, Daniel came into their room just before dawn. His eyes were wide, but dry. Awake, alert. "Mommy," he said. "She's in the wall." Sarah sat up, heart pounding. "Who is, baby?" He pointed toward his room. "Evelyn. She was crying. She says you left her." The silence in the house turned cold. Outside, the wind blew harder. And inside Sarah's chest, something finally cracked open. The next day, the smell of smoke was everywhere. Sarah noticed it first in the hallway, faint, acrid, like someone had burned toast and tried to hide it. She checked the kitchen. Nothing. The stove was off. The toaster unplugged. But the scent persisted, clinging to the air like a memory. She followed it to Daniel's room. There she stood still, her breath catching. All the windows were closed, the curtains still. But the smell was stronger here, as if something had scorched the walls from the inside out. Her eyes drifted toward the closet. Daniel sat cross-legged on the carpet, drawing again. This time, with red and black markers. His small hands moved quickly, almost compulsively, like he was copying something from inside his head. She knelt beside him. "What are you drawing, baby?" He didn't look up. "The hallway." Her stomach tightened. "What hallway?" "In the house," he said simply, as though she should understand. "The one that burned." She looked down. It was crude, but recognizable. A hallway with cracked wallpaper and 2 doors on either side. A fire crawling along the ceiling like it was alive. "Where are you in the picture?" she asked, her voice a whisper. He pointed to a small figure in the corner, holding something in its arms. "That's me. And that's Lily." Sarah's throat closed. The baby's name from the article. She wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand how he knew, but she didn't. Instead, she reached out and gently took the drawing from his hands. "I think we need to see someone," she said softly. Daniel didn't protest. He just looked at her with those wide, unreadable eyes. That afternoon, Sarah drove to Hartford with Daniel in tow. Her college friend, Dr. Amanda Reyes, agreed to see him on short notice. Amanda was calm, meticulous, not one to jump to conclusions. She led Daniel into a room with crayons and toys while Sarah waited outside, chewing her nails until they bled. After an hour, Amanda emerged with a troubled expression. "He's not psychotic," she said. "And he's not making it up." Sarah swallowed hard. "So what is this?" Amanda hesitated. "I don't like the term past lives. It's not clinical. But there's something called dissociative identity disorder, formerly multiple personality disorder. It can be trauma-based. Sometimes children create alternate personas to cope with things they don't understand. But he hasn't been through trauma," Sarah said. "He's loved. Protected." Amanda nodded slowly. "Yes. Which leaves something more disturbing." "Like what?" Amanda glanced toward the closed door. "Sometimes, in rare cases, children with DID carry trauma that doesn't originate in their own life." Sarah stared at her. "What are you saying? That he's channeling someone else?" "I'm saying," Amanda said carefully, "that your son believes he was someone else. Someone who died in a fire. With a baby in her arms." Sarah's mouth went dry. "And if that's true, Amanda added. Then the question becomes, why is he remembering it now? That night, Sarah didn't sleep. Again, she sat in Daniel's room, watching him breathe, the scent of smoke curling beneath the door even though no fire burned. At 2:37 a.m., the baby monitor she hadn't used in years crackled to life. A woman's voice. Soft. Singing. The same lullaby from before. Sarah stared at the speaker, ice washing through her veins. And in the reflection of the window, behind her, just for a moment, she thought she saw a woman in a red dress, standing in the corner, watching. By morning, the lullaby was gone. The smoke smell too. Sarah told herself it had to be exhaustion, maybe a waking dream. But something in her chest said otherwise, said this was real, and it had always been real. She opened her laptop again, typed in Evelyn Monroe, and fire. This time, she dug deeper. Public records, death certificates, deeds. She found it. The Monroe house had stood for 86 years, burned down in 2005. But before that, it had belonged to someone else. The Bennetts. Her maiden name. Sarah stared at the screen, lips parted. Her father's name was there, listed on the deed in 1984, before he'd moved them to New Hampshire, before the drinking, before her mother's overdose. She hadn't known. She'd been a toddler. She scrolled further. The records showed the house had been sold to the Monroes in 1998, when Sarah was 9, a year after she'd started sleepwalking, a year after she'd told her mother about the lady in the red dress who whispered to her at night. She called her sister. Lena, she said breathlessly when she picked up. Did we live on Winthrop Lane? In Westfield. There was silence. I'm not crazy, Sarah added. Her sister sighed. You're not crazy. But Mom never wanted to talk about that place. Why? Because, Lena said slowly, you kept waking up screaming. Said the house was going to burn down. That there was a baby in the walls. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Dad got weird about it, Lena continued. Started drinking heavier. Said it was just dreams. But Mom, I think she believed you. I remember once she packed a suitcase in the middle of the night, said she wasn't going to lose another baby. We left 3 days later. Sarah sat in stunned silence. She had no memory of this. None of it. It was like something had been scrubbed from her mind. But Daniel remembered. And the drawings, they weren't just someone else's memories. They were hers. Or had been. She hung up and drove to Westfield. Parked across from the lot where the Monroe house once stood. It was empty now, overgrown, fenced off with rusted chain link. Still, she knew the layout. Could picture it in her mind. The narrow stairs. The peeling wallpaper. The hall with the broken light fixture. She pressed her hand against the fence. And she remembered. Running barefoot across scorched floorboards. A baby crying. Smoke choking her lungs. A woman screaming her name. Not as a stranger, but as if she knew her. Not Evelyn. Sarah. She staggered back from the fence, dizzy. Her vision blurred. The memory was hers, but not from this life. That night, Daniel crawled into bed with her. She's angry, he whispered. She says you left her there. She says she screamed, and you didn't come. Tears filled Sarah's eyes. Why is she here now? Daniel's voice was hollow. Because she still can't find the baby. The room felt colder. The walls pressing in. And as she drifted toward sleep, she remembered a fire. And a baby's eyes, mirroring her own. Because maybe Evelyn hadn't been trying to save her baby. Maybe she'd been trying to save Sarah. Sarah couldn't stop shaking. The visions, the drawings, the smell, none of it was random. None of it was Daniel's imagination. It was history. Buried, twisted, reshaped by time and trauma, and now clawing its way back to the surface through her 6-year-old son. But why now? Why did the past come alive in him? She didn't go to work. Didn't answer Tom's texts. She spent the day combing through old journals and childhood sketchbooks her mother had boxed up years ago. Pages of scribbled nightmares. Houses burning. Cries for help in broken letters. One page made her stomach turn. A stick figure in a red dress. Fire all around her. And a note, in a child's hand. She screamed, but I didn't go back. The doorbell rang. She jumped. At the door stood a man, maybe late 50s. Trim beard. Heavy eyes. He held his hat in his hands, like he didn't quite know if he should be here. Are you Sarah Bennett? He asked. Yes. He hesitated. My name's Charles Monroe. Evelyn was my wife. Sarah stared at him. How did you? I saw your post, he said, nodding toward her car, where she'd accidentally left a sketch on the dashboard. My friend at the fire department, he recognized the drawing. Told me someone's kid was drawing my house. He reached into his coat, pulled out an old photo. Evelyn, smiling, holding a baby. Behind them, the house. Whole. Bright. Why does your son know this place? He asked. I don't know, Sarah said. I think he remembers. Things. From before. From that night. Charles's face twisted with something like hope and horror. Lily, he said quietly. We never found her. We found Evelyn in the hallway, holding blankets. But the baby wasn't there. The coroner said she must have already been ash. That there was nothing left. But Evelyn wouldn't let go. Sarah's hands trembled. What if the baby wasn't in the crib? She said, her voice cracking. What if someone took her out? Charles looked up sharply. Why would someone do that? She couldn't say it. Not yet. Instead, she asked, did Evelyn ever talk about dreams? Visions? He shook his head. She was grounded. Kind. But toward the end, after Lily was born, she said strange things. That someone was watching them. A little girl who'd show up in dreams. Crying. Begging to come in. Sarah's knees gave out. She was dreaming of me, she whispered. The pieces began to fall. Evelyn and Sarah connected across time. Sarah, the child haunted by visions. Evelyn, the mother drawn to a child who wasn't hers. Daniel, the link between them. That night, Sarah set up a recorder in his room. A baby monitor. Infrared camera. She needed proof for herself, for Tom, for the world if it came to that. She kissed Daniel goodnight. But he didn't respond. His eyes stared at the ceiling, wide and unblinking. Daniel, she whispered. And then he said it, not in his voice, not like a 6-year-old boy. In a woman's voice. Tired. Raw. You let me burn. Sarah stumbled back, mouth open. And Daniel sat up straight in bed, looking right through her. You left me. You took the baby. You ran. Sarah gasped. Because she remembered now. She had run. From the flames. From the crying. From the woman in the red dress. The next morning, Sarah didn't speak. She couldn't. The voice that had come from her son's mouth wasn't his. It was too old, too broken. And worse, it held the kind of betrayal that only comes from someone who had once trusted you completely. She drove to the edge of town with Daniel in the backseat, still quiet, dazed, sketching again. His tiny fingers stained with ash-gray crayon. She couldn't go back to Tom. Couldn't go back to her house, the walls humming with Evelyn's grief. There was only one place left to go. The ruins. The empty lot on Winthrop Lane. She parked at the curb. The chain-link fence was half collapsed, the city sign faded and covered in vines. It had rained the night before, and the earth was soft and dark. Sarah lifted Daniel from the car and walked him to the gate. We used to live here, she said quietly. Daniel didn't respond. She stepped over the broken fence. Her shoes sank slightly into the ground. The grass whispered as they moved through it, the silence pressing around them. She stopped at what had once been the front steps. I think I remember, she said, more to herself than to him. That night. The flames. I ran out. I don't know how I got in the house, or why I was even there, but I ran. She crouched beside Daniel. I left her, she whispered. I was a child. I didn't understand. I heard her scream my name, and I ran. Daniel turned to her. His voice was calm. Flat. You took Lily. Sarah blinked. No, I didn't. But something shifted in her mind. A memory uncoiling like smoke. Running. Holding something. A bundle. Heavy. A baby. I thought she was mine, she said aloud. I thought I had to save her. I didn't know. I was confused. I was just a kid. Daniel's eyes glistened with something beyond childhood. She died thinking you stole her daughter. Sarah sank to her knees, gripping the cold earth. I didn't mean to. I was trying to help. I ran to the neighbors. I handed them the baby. They called the fire department, but no one ever connected it. I didn't remember until now. She looked at him, heartbreaking. I didn't know it was her baby. I didn't know it was Evelyn. Daniel's face didn't change. She's still looking for Lily. Sarah shook her head. Lily died in the fire. No, Daniel said. She didn't. The wind rose suddenly, sweeping across the lot, and with it, the lullaby. Soft. Faint. Behind them, a voice. Sarah. Sarah turned, eyes wide. There, at the edge of the grass, stood Evelyn. Not a ghost, something else. A memory made flesh. Her dress singed. Her hair wild. Her eyes full of grief and rage and something deeper. Recognition. Sarah gasped. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know she was yours. Evelyn stepped forward. Her mouth trembled. Then, Daniel moved toward her, reached out, and Evelyn's face crumpled. Because it wasn't her child. It was just a messenger. Her eyes locked with Sarah's, and for the first time, she didn't scream. She just disappeared. A gust of wind. A whisper. A final breath. Gone. Sarah collapsed to the ground, sobbing. Daniel knelt beside her, placed a hand on her shoulder. She forgives you, he said, then paused. But Lily's not gone. Sarah looked up, heart pounding. What do you mean? Daniel turned toward the old foundations of the house. She was never in the fire. Sarah stared, and a new terror took hold. Because if the baby had survived, where had she gone? Sarah couldn't breathe. The sun had dipped low, casting long shadows over the ruins of the Monroe house. The wind had died down. Everything was still. But her heart thundered with one impossible truth. Lily Monroe had survived the fire. Where was she? Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel looked up at her, no longer just her son, but something more. A vessel. A memory. A bridge. You carried her out, he said. You thought she was yours. You gave her to the neighbors. But they didn't keep her. Someone else came. Sarah's mind reeled, grasping at images. That night. Sirens. Faces. The neighbors, old. Frail. They'd handed the baby off. She hadn't seen who took her. Daniel's voice deepened, not in pitch, but in gravity. They gave her to child services. She had no ID. No name. Just ashes in her hair. Sarah's pulse roared in her ears. And what happened? Daniel met her gaze, and for the first time in days, he smiled. Not as Evelyn. Not as someone else. But as Daniel. She grew up, he said. In foster homes. Moved around. Adopted. She always wondered where she came from. She dreamed of fire. Of a mother's scream. She thought she was crazy. Sarah felt the ground tilt beneath her. I don't understand. Daniel stepped back, as if giving the truth space to bloom. You didn't just carry her out of the fire, Mommy. You brought her into your life. Silence. Then, a slam. The front door of their house, behind them. Tom's voice calling out, Sarah? Sarah stood slowly, her limbs numb. Daniel walked ahead of her, back toward the car. And then it hit her. Like a blow. Like fire bursting through a window. She had adopted Lily. Not as a baby. As a teen. 12 years ago. A broken, silent girl in the system. No memory of her early life. Labeled dissociative unresponsive. Sarah had been volunteering. Helping with placement cases. Something about the girl had drawn her in. Cracked something in her chest. She'd only stayed for 6 months before vanishing from their lives. Lily. Sarah whispered, eyes wide. Lila. That was the name she'd chosen. Lila. A girl with sad eyes. A girl who'd run away in the middle of the night. No note. No trace. Tom had said to let it go. Said she was a troubled foster kid, not their responsibility. But Sarah had always wondered. Always felt like she'd lost something more than just a ward. Daniel turned around, his face grave now. She's trying to come back. Sarah's voice trembled. How do you know? She sent me the dreams. She sent me Evelyn. Sarah grabbed her phone, fingers fumbling. Opened old emails. Checked her inbox. Then her spam. And there it was. An unread message, 3 days old. From lila.m.102@protonmail.com. Subject. Do you remember me? Body. I remember everything now. The fire. The hallway. The screaming. I need to see you. Before it happens again. Attached was a photo. Lila, now in her 20s. Standing in front of the empty Monroe lot. Behind her, the faint shape of smoke curling from the ground. Sarah's breath hitched. Daniel's voice was quiet. She's coming. But something's coming with her. The air grew heavy again. Charged. And for the first time, Sarah realized. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. Of hers. Of Lila's. Of a fire that never stopped burning.